Now, I first saw this film remotely at Sundance, and I watched it the live premiere, which meant that over here it was 4 a.m.
Oh
It was
my
4
God.
a.m. on a Sunday morning, and it was like the dead of night. And I have to say that yeah, that's an experience at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
I
It
was
was
like,
written at 4 o'clock in the morning a lot of the time, so maybe you had a more.
it was like, is this the film? Am I hallucinating? Am I dreaming? It was a very, very sort of wild experience. And now
Yeah.
this is, your first feature. A lot of people, when they make the progression from shorts to feature length, they'll make a nice, simple slasher film or a comedy. But, you've gone sort of straight in with this lyrical, philosophical, folk horror. Why was it important that this was your first feature story?
Oh, to be honest, I wouldn't claim too much responsibility for that decision. Like I'd written, by the time I could make any feature, I'd already written 13 of them. And then it was my producer actually who had kind of read all the summaries. And she chose a few to read, but she is in full screenplays, but this is the one she read overnight. And it wasn't the one that I spoke to many people about because I just thought it's so strange and, on the face of it, esoteric. I didn't want to alienate people by emphasizing how weird I might possibly be on the inside. So I wasn't sure I would ever make the film. Definitely didn't think it was my first film. Uh, and then it was it wasn't even in the making of it. It was in the preparations that, the more time I was spending in this world and in this mindset that I felt like, well, if I only ever make one film, I'm glad this is the one because emotionally it feels like I wouldn't say autobiographical, but like I don't know, so much of my feeling is captured in it, and then will live on after me, which is the reason I make movies. And there's elements of my life and the people I'm closest to that are more, that I love, that are most important to me, that survive, that are in this film now, like captured forever. And I thought, well, if I died, well, not tomorrow, but if I die right after the film is finished, I'm glad I made this one. Admittedly, I felt similarly about the second film I made as well. But I do feel extremely lucky because of that now. I think, and I do really like that it's not something that, people would automatically see as, oh, it's obviously just him. I really, spend my life being reduced to my demographics, and it gets very frustrating. A lot of the time people who do it are very well meaning, but it's no less frustrating. So I really want to connect to people who aren't just like me, and on the surface, because I think on a level of, so on a soul deep level, I think there's things that are much more important about us than just like identity markers.
Yeah.
And I think there's more of me in these two women than there is in probably any character I'm ever gonna write. So yeah.
And the opening scene, like I say, 4 a.m. in the morning, that opening scene is so intense. It's straight out of like a Brothers Grimm fairy tale or something. How did that sort of horrifying moment come to be? Where did you get that idea from? Because it really does, really capture the attention.
Yeah. When I first came up with the story, it actually started with what is now the flashback in the film about Maria's backstory, and this was something that happened, right afterwards. But it obviously felt like yet another beginning, so it didn't really quite work in that way. Um, I sort of it's hard to even think back to it because a lot of the time the creative process is very instinctive and like things come to me in a flood of
Mm.
feelings and sort of I knew there were these, two different energies in terms of two different characters. I had Nevena's inner voice, and I also had Maria's maybe not inner voice in the sense of the voiceover, but just like how she was thinking and feeling, and then how do they connect? Um, and I just thought like I wanted to set a scene in what is like an ordinary day, an ordinary house in this particular time and place, where and if someone could be standing like 50 meters away and not know something strange is happening in this sun dappled household. um and I just want to like something mundane to suddenly flip into something very unsettling, but in terms of how it feels on the inside, more than how it looks on the inside outside. I didn't want it to be too there isn't really music in that scene to amp up the terror. I didn't want to spectacularize it. Okay, that's not a word, but I I was very interested in trying to couch all these unsettling moments within just ordinary mundane reality, because I think a lot of the time when horrible things happen to us, what I'm always struck by is like, but the world is still so normal around me. How is this happening to me when everything is normal? Like I should be hearing orchestras now, god damn it, but like everything is normal and there isn't an easy way out in either direction. And why is everyone behaving like everything is normal? And I am really driven by that feeling.
Yeah. I mean, as a mother of a 3-year-old, blood just went immediately cold. It was so, you really
I've spoken to a lot of moms of young children recently, it's just most of my friendship circle, and they're like, girl, I can't watch you film again.
It's a lot. But you have this main character that is not only mute, but is one that is forever changing vessel. How did you work and select your cast to make sure? Because I think even though she is forever moving into these other bodies, you can tell it's still the same character, which is really hard to sort of get your head around, because they've done such a good job at doing the same mannerisms and things.
Yeah, no, I feel very, again, lucky about that. In terms of casting, I was just looking for people who I felt were very fearless, and like irrespective of whether they're in a stylized genre world or like kitchen sink drama, they can connect intensely to the people around them and to the story, no matter what. And I feel like Numi and Carlotta, and the other actors have that quality to them. And then in terms of building that continuity, I was hoping and praying a little bit, but I wasn't very. I'm not a very strict director, right? Especially like, to me, directing isn't about telling people what to do. It's about like nurturing. Like I'm mom on set. I'm not dad. Like I feel like it's about protecting them, building an environment where they feel like they can, go crazy with their feelings and bring something of their own, and then it's my job to shape it into the story. But like the raw stuff needs to come from them, from the inside, and they dictate that. I don't, what I will say is that I realized after I finished the movie that when I'm directing, I put myself in the emotional state. With every scene, I put myself in the emotional state of what the character is experiencing. A bunch of actors have made the point of like, they've seen me look at the monitor and I look like insane because I'm almost like a mirror of it, which I did not realize until they pointed it out. And I think there is something instinctive and symbiotic that happens when, like, if you're talking to someone, I don't talk about them about what I'm feeling, but the feeling comes through. And then I was the person, like, a lot of them didn't get to meet each other, so I was the person that was on set at all times. And the other person that was around, not always on set, but Sarah Klinoska, who establishes the character and whose voiceover it is. We recorded the voiceover before the movie, before we even spoke too much about the character. So in putting that voiceover together, like the feeling of it, the character became very much more vivid for both of us. And then everyone who came on board afterwards would have heard the voiceover. They met with Sarah to kind of, some of the first scenes we shot were with her, so the mannerisms were kind of established through her. She had a reference video I came across of a girl who was raised in captivity in America in the 60s and then discovered at age 13, and it's just a 45-second snippet of how she's just moving about in a garden, but there's just something so vivid that you don't even need to put into words about the way just her body language that tells you all you need to know about how this experience has shaped her. So, and it's really moving and beautiful. And I know it affected Sarah very much. And we showed that clip to others. She spoke about that a little bit. But generally speaking, I wasn't never very strict about maintaining mannerisms. I just trusted that they would come through. They're in the screenplay, what the mannerisms are to an extent, in the prose in between the dialogue. So I think when the actors are reading, they're absorbing that, but they had a lot of freedom to build on what was there and just bring some of their own stuff. And then that keeps the character evolving throughout. So it's not just, it's not static.
Yeah. And the film, with it having, you know, a main character that can't speak, that means that a lot more onus is put on the sounds that we can hear. Just wondering if you could talk a bit about the sound design process, because again, that opening scene with the cat disappearing off screen, and then that first sound, and you kind of, you know what's happening. You know, how did you want your sound to be? Because I guess in a way it is the storyteller to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. It was the same principles it was for the visuals, something that doesn't sensationalize things, doesn't look for spectacle, but just in this moment, what are we feeling? I definitely wanted clarity, but I just and sometimes I didn't want, I'm actually very squeamish, so I don't want to look at gore, but if that's what she's looking at, I have to honor her. And then sometimes it's about what the feeling is. Like, did I hear that? Did this just happen? I didn't see it. I wanted that feeling to it. And then a lot of people comment about the sensory nature of the movie and mistake it for the cinematography, but it's really the sound that's doing most of the heavy lifting. I've spoken a lot about how I'm not the only auteur in this film. My cinematographer, Maddie Chuang, is another one. Bethany Ryan, production designer, is also, and Christina, the producer. And I should also say the sound designer, Emma Bortignon. She actually listens to there's a lot of footage that went into this film. We shot long takes and improvised. She listens to every single sound, collated it almost obsessively. And then she had this library of this soundscape, at her disposal through this like a very lengthy, sound design process. And we were very specific about what each sound should be, but then it was her creating it. And also that principle, like my catchphrase, especially with Emma, my catchphrase was just think it's a Tuesday. Basically, yes, someone is being disemboweled, but it's not an event in their lives because it happens every day. So sometimes our conversation was like, okay, so is this one a Tuesday or is this like a special day? And yeah, I mean, even there was a library of winds, different kinds of wind. Like, how much do you hear the leaves? How much you don't? The voiceover. I think in a theater, you appreciate how the voiceover is pitched very differently to what it is on TV. Like, there's a reason it's pitched at that level. Even when we had some pushback, we were very strongly felt like, no, but this is how she feels. She's a little bit like, there is an intensity to it that you lose. It's not about coddling you into this world. Like, this is how she's a wild child, in that literal sense of like a feral child, as it used to describe, and the sound should reflect that. And yeah, like, we're very judicious about when you hear the details of the texture of the everyday, and when it just fades away based on where her attention span is at that particular time. Yeah.
Well, I definitely think it all works to create this really sort of beautiful film. And you said it took you a while to get this one made, but you've already made your second one. I was wondering if there was anything that you could share about Of an Age.
Oh, well, I'm not sure how much I'm going to share or not, but it is coming out to theaters early next year. I can say that. And Focus Features is releasing it in America and Universal internationally. I'm very happy about that. It's a very different film in some ways. I'm really glad that when people watch it, they're like, oh wow, but I can tell it's you, even though it's present day. Well, it's not present day. It's set in suburban Melbourne in the 1990s, and it's a gay love story. And I mean, that one doesn't have voiceover or lots of nature. It's a very urban, ugly, setting. And I was trying to find something that is cinematic and transporting in what is, to me, the least cinematic place I've ever been in, the streets I grew up on. And yeah, it's a grungy gay love story. And it's poignant and funny. And my pitch was, it'll make you cry at least twice and horny at least 3 times and laugh liberally across the span of the story. And seems to have worked so far. So in terms of the responses I'm getting from audiences, but I will say it's very fascinating to me that with You Won't Be Alone, a lot of the people who are talking to me with the most intense emotional reactions are queer men. A lot of women as well, as we'd expect. Whereas with Of an Age, which is a gay male love story, a lot of the people who are most passionate about it and come to me with tiers are women, like straight women. And I really like that I'm making movies that kind of transcend those demographics that I feel like limit us a little too much.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely sounds like you've got sort of a nice yin and yang going on with these first two films.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
And I will wish you the best of luck with the UK release of the You Won't Be Alone. I'm sure it's going to do really well.
Thanks so much, Kat. This was fun. Thank you.